Whenever we discuss enterprise architecture, which picture out of these three comes in your mind first? Is it A or B, C? I shall come to the answer a bit later, but another concept, or should I say a misconception, which comes in everyone's mind as soon as we start discussing enterprise architecture, is that it is related to information technology. Well, as the word says, enterprise, it actually involves the business strategies, the processes, the information, and technology. And enterprise architecture is actually the framework which binds all this together to align to the organization's goals. If your answer had been B, you are correct, because that includes the organization's information, the hierarchies, the processes, and the technology. So now let's look at enterprise architecture, its details and definitions in the beginning. I'm going to provide two definitions. It's a framework that documents current IT assets and business processes to transition to a desired future state that supports the business's overarching goals. Enterprise architecture identifies IT systems, applications, and processes and how the parts fit together. If we have to look at a second definition, EA is a strategic planning process that enables organizations to align their business goals with technology investments. So the starting point will be the mission vision statement of the organization along with their strategic objectives. In this tutorial of the next few videos, I am going to take the bank as an example as an enterprise organization because that's the organization or the sector where I have worked in. In this tutorial, I'm going to divide the importance and benefits of EA. We are going to look at them separately. First, let us look at the importance. Strategic alignment. It aligns business goals with IT infrastructure and other IT solutions, ensuring all technology investments support business objectives. Decision making. It provides a clear understanding of the org structure, aiding in informed decision making. Risk management helps identify and manage risks associated with IT investments. And finally, compliance. Ensure adherence to regulatory requirements and internal governance standards. Now, let us look at some of the key benefits of an EA. Shared vision. EA is critical for developing a shared vision and aligning stakeholders around a common strategic direction. Reduce cost. EA achieves this goal by standardizing the IT infrastructure, eliminating redundant applications, and optimizing tech investments. We shall see this in upcoming videos about how we execute an APO exercise. And finally, improve collaboration. An EA is a strategic approach that enables improved collaboration between business and IT teams. This is a very important line. It aligns business requirements and goals with IT strategies to create a holistic view of the organization's functions and operations. Two other major benefits: EA helps build organizational resilience through risk management, business continuity, flexibility, efficiency, and compliance. And finally, we come to process standardization. It guarantees that business operations are consistent and streamlined across departments, resulting in fewer errors and less operational inefficiency. Now let us move into the EA documentation part, which is perhaps the most elaborate and the most important part of the enterprise architecture. But we must remember one thing in the beginning, that EA is not just some set of diagrams and texts. It is a strategic asset that guides the organization in aligning their IT to their business goals. Effective enterprise architecture documentation typically includes an overview, a high level description of the organization's mission, vision, goals, and structure. I would like to add here the strategic initiatives and objectives. Next comes the architecture framework, an outline of the EA framework used, for example, TOGAF or Zachman framework. Current state architecture, a depiction of the IT landscape, including hardware, software, data, and business processes. We shall delve deep into this later on in one of the tutorials. Future state architecture, a vision of the desired future state of the IT landscape aligned with business goals. This statement is very important. Roadmap, a strategic plan outlining the steps required to transition from the current state to the future state. Now, depending on the organization, it may be a 3 year, 5 year, 7 year roadmap. Governance structure, details on the governance mechanisms to manage and oversee the EA in future. Let us see some of the best practices in EA documentation. Stakeholder engagement. Engage the stakeholders across the organization to gather comprehensive insights. For example, in the banking example, have communication and a questionnaire with various segments of the bank. We shall see this in a tutorial later. Clarity and consistency. Documentation should be clear, consistent, and concise across all components. Regular updates. Keep the documentation updated to reflect changes in business strategies and IT landscapes. And accessibility. Make the documents accessible to all the relevant stakeholders. We have just now seen some of the best practices in effective EA documentation. Let us look at the challenges now. Complexity. Simplifying complex architectures into understandable documentation is required. So it's complex because there are many teams participating at the same time. Stakeholder alignment. Aligning diverse stakeholders' views and needs. Resource constraint is also a challenge because in some cases we have to manage documentation with limited resources and time. In my case, there are certain instances when I have to manage everything on my own. Finally, change management, keeping the documentation up to date in the face of constant organizational changes. A lot of ad hoc templates or formats are used at many times, but we cannot underestimate the role of standards. Adhering to EA standards such as TOGAF or ZACMAN ensures that the documentation is comprehensive, structured, and universally understandable. Frameworks for developing the enterprise architecture such as TOGAF and ZACMAN are there for quite some time. Tools and technologies have now come up for basically creating and maintaining the enterprise architecture. So let us now take a look at some of these. For developing the EA modeling tools, we have tools like Archimate, which offer functionalities to create models. Collaboration platforms like Confluence and SharePoint. These platforms help in collaborative editing and documentation sharing. We have version control systems like JIT, where the document changes are tracked and managed effectively. Finally, a few words about enterprise architecture governance, framework, and mechanism. Enterprise architecture governance is a practice that encompasses the fundamental aspects of managing the corporation or business. It involves firm leadership, complete knowledge of organizational structure, a confident direction, and the enablement of effective IT processes to promote an enterprise's strategies. So, what are the components of EA governance framework? It's the organizational structure. It includes the roles and responsibilities, the processes, the standards and guidelines, metrics, tools. So to recap about today's introductory tutorial, we saw the definition of EA, importance, benefits, structure of an EA and the documentation involved, best practices in EA documentation, challenges in preparing the EA, the role of standards, tools and technologies used, and finally the EA governance and framework. In this first tutorial, we have seen the fundamentals of enterprise architecture, what it is composed of, the benefits, the importance, and we have seen some other aspects as well. We shall see in future some more of the EA tools that are used and how the EA is developed step by step. We shall see the main components of enterprise architecture in the coming tutorials. For example, the business architecture, the application architecture, the technical architecture, the data architecture, the security architecture, and how the finally we arrive at the enterprise architecture. So if you like this video and find this video helpful and informative, please do like, share, and subscribe. See you soon in the next video on business architecture.